Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video for Final Fantasy XIV. In this video, I just wanted to talk and have a bit of a discussion about Island Sanctuary. So, it's kind of appropriate then that I'm sat here, staring at a monitor, and here we are on Gangos Beach, basically looking at a sunset as it sets over a distant island that we will never get to go and explore, as we are farming for more relic weapons. This is pretty much the normality of most of the content that would probably be deemed as casual, right? This is not something that's ever going to equate to anything that I can actually physically use outside of, the tombstone weapons are better currently, and relic weapons are always sort of always about glamour at the end of the day, and that's fine. Glamour, as I've said on many occasions, is the ultimate endgame, because when a savage tier ends, all you're left with is a beautiful weapon or set of armor to carry you forward, and that's excellent. But it adds to the credence then that a lot of the content that we do is quite grindy, or at least is quite dependent on other people, especially in these new relics. So Island Sanctuary content then, if you remember back to the announcement showcase of 6.0, we have basically this image. And this image has actually made its way onto my wallpaper for my desktop background for quite a considerable amount of time. And that's pretty much all we have to go off of, other than the basic information that we're going to be able to basically play Farmville. So this content, if you weren't aware, just to reiterate, as the picture shows you, you'll be able to have this large ranch, presumably instanced, so kind of like the instance housing that people wanted, ? You'll be able to rear animals was one of the things that was mentioned, so like breed animals was mentioned. You'll be able to grow your own crops, and you'll be able to harvest these crops and then sell them for gil, that was also mentioned. You're going to be able to put your own minions out on your ranch, so for me that's over 300 and something minions just chilling out, helping out, hopefully. I mean, in the image it does show a Namazu holding a carrot. I'm sure this is just artistic license, but how amazing would it be if you could hire your minions to carry around a pitchfork and clean out some stables? But this is the sort of content that I personally welcome with open arms. Now, if you remember a long time ago, they mentioned, Square Enix that is, they mentioned how they were not going to do an extra dungeon per patch, so the hard mode dungeons were not going to be a thing anymore. Instead, we were going to get one major dungeon that they put more effort into, and then spend the rest of that budget elsewhere, which resulted in things like ocean fishing, which is something that I think personally went down quite well. A lot of people that I know of that are the target audience for that are absolutely in love with it. Me personally, I find that a welcome distraction and a nice bit of content to do, other than just the same old day in and day out type of stuff. So personally, when it comes to the idea of an Island Sanctuary, I'm all about that. I would love nothing more than to just go to my Island Sanctuary and just relax there. And I think it's going to be some of the most relaxing and most rewarding content we've got. So obviously, to incentivize people to do this sort of content, usually they put something in it, right? With ocean fishing, we had a mount, the Hibodus mount, the shark mount. We've had minions in there and other stuff like that, titles and achievements, you name it. So it's very likely that this sort of content would have the same. So say for perhaps we're going to be growing certain vegetables or crossbreeding them or something, or maybe we'll be rearing the best quality animal or grooming an animal. Think about all of the other things from those types of games, including stuff like Barbie, right? At the same time as like the stable games, the horse breeding games we have, all of these things might not be your cup of tea, but this is like the Square Enix Final Fantasy take on this. This is Final Fantasy Harvest Moon. Now, the fact that Endwalker has a moon as the logo, and this is actually like harvesting and content like that, is pure coincidence, I'm sure, but this is Harvest Moon Edition. Final Fantasy XIV Harvest Moon, there we go, that's what's going to happen. So meanwhile, the world's ending and there's big dragons or whatever, or Void Scent invading and killing everybody, I'll be there with my pitchfork, clearing out a stable, wiping my brow, There'll be farmer sage Meoni just chilling out, using my new lifts to pick up objects to carry a bucket of water and, you know, feed some animals. And yeah, it just sounds like the perfect sort of content. Now, if you've ever played a game like Harvest Moon, or indeed Animal Crossing, which is obviously the other thing that people will reference because that also recently had an island sanctuary, an island getaway, that sort of content is quite fun. It's quite addictive. So I would imagine people like myself and other people who like those types of games to be really stuck into that. Again, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and some people argue that the game is going in a different direction than they perhaps would like to. Personally, I think that there is still plenty of endgame difficult PvE content. In my opinion, you might disagree. The delay of Ultimate, I've seen people report on Reddit and other forum posts and in social media saying that, oh, screw these people, they get this touchy-feely fuzzy content and we get nothing. It's like, yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree there. The development is quite different between those two things. The testing on them is quite different between those two types of content, I can assure you. And ultimately, they're usually different parts, different staff members, different departments of the same internal staff, right? You don't have the lead content designer for a raid design a cabbage patch, do you? This is usually stuff reserved to different members, different aspects of the art team, for example, working on assets, stuff like that. So this sort of content is right up my particular avenue. It won't be up everyone's, but I'm personally looking forward to the instant sort of content, because they actually, for the first time, mentioned solo casual content and how we're not going to have to compete with other players. So this, to me, reminds me very heavily of full instance content. So I imagine that maybe they're going to use the phasing technology that was used in the Doman reconstruction and more recently the Ishgard restoration, so that you can see the same area, but depending on what character you're on, what client you're on, you see something different, right? But it could also go as far as to separate you into separate phased instances. Okay, so imagine I'm literally in the same coordinates as my friend, but I'm inside my barn, he's not there, and it shows me a different screen than what he sees. That technology is there, and they've been playing with that for a long time. Also, the same technology where we could essentially be out in a courtyard, and he could be stood next to me, but he could see his version of that courtyard, and I could see my version of that courtyard. You know what I mean? That tech is also there. So I'm very interested from a technical standpoint which of those options they're going to go for. If they're going to have, the ability to travel between those instances, basically those particular phased sections, or how ultimately they're going to do it. This is all speculative, but a lot of people are wondering as well, which is the big question, is if they can do stuff like that, if this can be your farming content that's for you only, why could they not do something similar for housing? And really, I think that it might be a case of the housing system being too far gone to change now. I think this is the answer to that directly, as another form of housing, basically. Of course, you're probably going to have a farmhouse, right? If you look at that image, as you can see, again, we have this windmill in the background. It's on the side of the place. You've got all these fields and stuff. It looks like this is our island, and that's our property that we are rebuilding, or we are adding to. I can imagine then, very much like in a Harvest Moon game, or even in Animal Crossing or something like that, maybe in like a Harvest Moon game where you arrive to the island and it's all in complete shambles. Maybe this is one of the islands near Favnia that completely got wrecked by whatever happens in 6.0, right? And we're rebuilding it, we're restoring it, we have our own restoration content essentially in that island sanctuary. Maybe it'll already pre-built, but maybe it would also be fun to see that develop, and you can add items to build that barn and things like that. That sort of solo content with that kind of like daily sort of incentive would be enough for me to lose interest in any other game. And that's ultimately the big question at the moment. what hasn't Final Fantasy XIV got? Because once it's got this, I firmly believe that we are heading down a territory of having so many different types of games in one that I really have no reason to go elsewhere. It's such a good box of toys at the end of the day. But, I mean, you might disagree. There's plenty of other content that we would like to see in the game. Me, personally, I would love to see a monster arena type piece of content with taming and then fighting monsters, similar to Final Fantasy X, if you know that. Or even X-2, where you actually trap monsters and then you use them, in battle. That sort of content. A lot of people want particular classes to become available, Beast Tamer and, or stuff like that. Beastmaster and Tamer and Puppet Master and more limited job content, but you know what I mean? It's all up in the air, but I think that heading the right direction with this side of content, and the RP potential for this is huge. The only thing I would request is the ability to just invite someone to your island to show them around. I think that would be nice. As much as they want solo content, I think that the Island Sanctuary would be nice if I could choose to, for example, my in real life girlfriend Fran, get her to come over, and look around, perhaps even help out, maybe we could work together on this stuff. But if it is purely solo content, that's fine, and I'm sure I'm going to be focusing a lot on that on my Twitch channel on twitch.tv/Meoni next year. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to Island Sanctuary. There's very little to talk about apart from to hype it. I'm really looking forward to letting the minions run loose, to farming some vegetables, to complain about failed harvests, to, you can imagine all of the cliche things that you could see, maybe weather reports, tomorrow will be sunny, etc. I would love to see that in Final Fantasy XIV. But anyway, let me know what you think about our Island Sanctuary and the proposed farming content that's been long promised to us, and we're finally getting it delivered in 6.0. What you would like to see added to that, what features you'd like to see, if any, or if it's not your cup of tea and they should have spent all of the extra money on more combat content. Let me know. It's a very different game these days than it used to be. I can freely admit that, but I personally think it's going in a healthy direction for everybody. Much love, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye. Meanwhile, obviously I'm going to be grinding more of these relics. I have 15 more to get. Technically 14 more because I'm halfway through the last stage. So, yeah, 14 more to get, ultimately. Not bad, not bad. Let's see if I can do it before 6.0.